Okay, today, okay, so today I'm going to go over with you how to construct a line graph. So you should have three pieces of paper. Okay, this is your notes. This section right here is your step-by-step how-to. This section down here is your rubric. Okay, so every time you do a line graph for me, it's going to be 11 points. These are the points. They have to be there and they have to be correct in order to get the point for it. Okay, so when we look at, so we have our graphing data. This is what we're going to do together today with this video, and then graphing this is your homework, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. Okay, and then you have your graph paper. So if I look at my how-to sheet, the first step is to identify the variables. Okay, the independent variable goes in the x-axis. Okay, this is on the left-hand side of the data table. Okay, so when I look at this, time is my independent variable. Okay, so I'm just going to write a little IV on the top, independent variable. The second step is to find the dependent variable. Okay, that goes on the y-axis, and that should be on the right-hand side of my data table. So this is my dependent variable, that's my distance. Okay, so I need to label my graph. The first thing I'm going to do is how should I orientate my graph? So if I look, my distance, my dependent variable go on the y-axis, that goes up to 200. My dependent variable on the x-axis, that goes to 10. Okay, so I'm going to have, since my dependent variable has a larger scale, it has to go to 200. I'm going to put the long side going up and down, and the short side going this way. I'm going to make sure that the spaces where I have the large gaps, they're going to be on the sides where I'm going to label my axis. Okay, so my x-axis, that's my independent variable, that's my time. So I'm going to write time down here. And I'm going to write the units that I'm measuring time in. I'm measuring it in seconds, so I'm just going to put seconds in my little bracket. Notice how I'm leaving space for my numbering. Okay, then I got to label my dependent variable. Remember, we start from the bottom up when we write. That's going to be distance in meters, so it's easier for me if I just spin this. I'm going to leave a space for my numbers. Okay, and I'm going to write distance, and I'm measuring that in meters. Okay, so I have my label and my units. Okay, so the next thing we should do is we determine the variable range. So we're going to select the lowest data from the highest data. Okay, so if I look at my x-axis, right, my range is my highest minus my lowest, which is 10. Okay, so my range for my independent variable is 10. My range for my dependent variable, 200 minus 0, is 200. Okay, so now I got to find the scale. Okay, remember this scale equals my range divided by my number of lines. Okay, so for the vertical, up and down, my range is 200. How many lines do I have? Okay, so this is my 0 mark, so I don't count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, and the top one is 38. Okay, so I have 38 lines. Okay, so to find my range, I'm going to take 200. So I'm just going to plunk this in my calculator. 200 divided by 38 is going to equal 5.263. Okay, so then I round that to the nearest whole number, and I have to round up. Okay, so when I round up, that's going to be 6. Okay, so I can count by 6s for every line. Okay, so now I've got my whole x-axis labeled. Make sure that you're writing the numbers, corresponding numbers, even with the lines. Okay, so now I got to figure out my scale for my x-axis. Okay, so my range, like we said, was 10. Okay, and then I got to divide it by the number of lines. So I start at 0 and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So I take my 10 divided by my 28, and I get 0.35. Okay, so I'm going to round that up to the next easiest thing to count by. I'm going to round that up to 0.5 or 1/2. That means each one of these lines is going to be 1/2. I want to make sure I line them up so it's easiest if I just kind of write it like that so that they're lining right up with my line. Okay, so it's nice and neat and I can tell which line is which. And I got it, even though my data is going to stop, I need to label my lines all the way to the end of my graph. Okay, so now I've got my graph, I've got my scale, I've got it all labeled. Okay, so now I need to plot the data. Okay, so for my first one, I have 0 seconds and 0 distance. That's right here at my axis. Okay, so then I have 1 second, that's here, and I have 2 meters. Okay, so it's going to be about 1/3 of the way up, so it's going to be right about here. I have to estimate. Science data is messy. My second point is 2 seconds. It's up at 8. Okay, so it's about 1/3 above my 6, right about here. Okay, at 3 seconds, I have 18. Okay, so that's right on my line right here. Okay, my next one is 4 and 32, so I go 4, and here's my 30, and it's just above that one, about 1/3 of the way. And then I have 5 and 50, so I go over my 5, my 50 is about halfway in between. Okay, so right about there, not quite halfway. My next one is 6, and it goes up to 72. That's right on the cross. My next one is 7, it goes up to 98, so it's just above my 96 line. About 1/3 of the way. My next one is 8, and that goes up to 128. So it's just above my 126 line. Okay, so you're going to have to do a lot of estimating in science. These numbers don't just work out nice and easy all the time. Okay, so that was my 8s. Now we're at 9 seconds. That goes up to 162. Right there. And then I got my 10 seconds, and that goes up to 200. Okay, so right above my 198 line. Okay, so right about here. Okay, so now I've got all my plots pointed. Okay, so if I go back to my instructions, it says plot the data. So I plot the points on the line. Label each data dot if it doesn't kind of cluttered up. Okay, so this one was 0, 0. This one was 1, 2. This one was 2, 8. 3, 18. 4, 32, 5 and 50, 6 and 72, 7 and 98, 8 and 128, 9 and 162, and 10 and 200. Okay, so I've labeled my plots. Then we got to draw the line. Okay, so this is not a dot to dot. You shouldn't just be doing straight lines in between. This is a best fit. Okay, and if I look at this data, it's got a nice curve going up this way. So I'm just going to kind of curve my data line, curve it kind of right on up. Okay, there's my best fit line. So we don't want straight lines dot to dot. We kind of want that general nice sloping trend line. Okay, so now that we've drawn our curve, we've drawn our line, the last thing that's on our list is we need to title our graph. Okay, and so something's going distance over time. Okay, so I can just put a distance versus time. Okay, that's good enough to be our title. It's descriptive. It tells us what we are graphing. Okay, so now that we've got our title on there, we've got everything graphed, we need to go through our rubric just to make sure. So number one, graph has a descriptive title. Do I? Yes, I do. That's a point. X-axis is labeled correctly. So labeled correctly, I have time, I have my units. Okay, that looks good. My y-axis is labeled correctly. So I have my distance, I have my units. Okay, make sure you have both the description and what you're measuring in. Okay. My graph covers at least 3/4 of the page. Okay, my graph covers, it's more than 3/4 this way, it's more than 3/4 that way. So it covers that. Numerical value for each square is equal. So each one of my squares going up is 6. Each one of my squares going to the side is a half. So that would cover that. Best fit line. So I didn't do dot to dots, I did a nice curve. So there's that point. Data plot is accurately and neatly. So I can see where it is. I've got my points plotted. They're done neatly. Graph has a key if necessary. Okay, so for this one, we only have one line, so we don't need a key. For the one that you're gonna do, we stepped up the difficulty, okay? There are 3 different lines you're gonna have to make, okay? So you're gonna need a key for that one. And then the overall points, depending on whether your graph needs a key or not, is going to be 10 or 11 points. Okay? All right, so that's how we do line graphs in here. Your homework, or your on your own practice. On the back side of this, okay, you're going to graph this data. Okay, your graph is going to have 3 different lines. This will always be your X value. Okay, that's what goes left to right. You're going to have 3 different Y values. So for your first line, this is your Y value that you'll plot. For your second line, you're going to just cover this up. This will be your, I'm going to write Y2 for your second line. So this is the Y value. So you'd use this as your X, how far you go over, and this is your rise, how far you go up. So your run and your rise. For the third Y, for the third line, this is your third Y value, okay? So again, you're going to use this as your X values, and this is your Y values when you plot your points, okay? So you're going to need to follow the directions, graph this data, okay? And then when you're all done, go through the rubric and double check and make sure you have everything that you need.